Every empire was built by ambition and buried by innocence. Look back at history. The pattern never changes. Good people are remembered, but rarely obeyed. They're praised only when they're gone, when their goodness can't threaten anyone anymore. The kind die early. The honest are betrayed. And those who rise to power, they're not the pure, they're the prepared. Socrates trusted truth to protect him. It didn't. Jesus believed love could save mankind. It couldn't. Gandhi preached peace to men who only understood control. They weren't defeated because they were wrong. They were defeated because they believed. The world rewards goodness. It doesn't. Goodness isn't a shield. It's exposure. When you lead with virtue alone, you walk into a game you don't understand. A game designed by those who don't play fair. Power doesn't answer to morality. Power creates its own morality. So ask yourself, why do good men always lose? Maybe it's because they still believe. The game is about truth and justice. When everyone else is playing for survival, there was one man who saw through this illusion. Niccolò Machiavelli. He didn't write about how the world should work. He wrote about how it does work. And his question still cuts through time. Like a knife. What if morality isn't the path to power, but its disguise? That's the uncomfortable truth. Power hides behind goodness. It smiles. It preaches virtue. It wears kindness, like armor. But underneath, it calculates. It watches. It waits. The world doesn't destroy goodness. It studies it, copies it, and then uses it as bait. Because, in every era, the white pieces fall first. Not because they were wrong, but because they were predictable. And until we understand why, the good will keep losing. That single divide separates the dreamer from the strategist, and few understood it better than Niccolò Machiavelli. It was the early 1500s. Florence stood at the crossroads of art, faith, and betrayal. Behind the beauty of the Renaissance, its marble statues, its divine paintings, lay a city rotting from within. Families traded loyalty for influence. Promises dissolved the moment. Power was at stake. Florence was a theater where virtue was performed, and ambition wrote the script. Machiavelli was not born into wealth or nobility. He was a civil servant, intelligent, loyal, and painfully idealistic. He believed in the Republic, in reason, in the possibility of an honest government. For years, he served the people of Florence, with faith in institutions and in virtue. But faith is fragile. When power shifts, when the Medici family, the ruthless dynasty he once opposed, returned to power, everything collapsed. Machiavelli was accused of conspiracy, imprisoned, tortured. The republic he defended abandoned him. The ideals he trusted shattered. And in that silence, stripped of honor, stripped of illusion, he began to see the world differently. In exile, he wrote The Prince, not as a plea for tyranny, but as an autopsy of power. He wasn't inventing cruelty. He was documenting it. The book was a mirror, not a manifesto. He wrote what others were too afraid to admit. To expect loyalty from them is to invite your own destruction. This wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. Machiavelli realized that morality in politics is often theater. Those who lead by virtue alone are devoured by those who understand its performance. He separated two worlds. The one we wish existed, built on justice and honesty, and the one that does exist, ruled by fear, need, and survival. Between them lies the truth we rarely dare to face. To him, power was not evil. It was neutral. What mattered was whether one had the wisdom to see it clearly and the courage to use it effectively. Machiavelli forced humanity to look in the mirror, and the reflection was not divine. It was human, fragile, fearful, selfish, but real. He didn't corrupt morality. He exposed its weakness, because only when we see the world as it truly is, can we decide whether we wish to change it or master it. In every society, from kingdoms to corporations, the same law rules. You are either the hunter or the hunted. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology ever gave it a name. He saw power not as an idea, but as a biological force, the same force that drives wolves to hunt, birds to deceive, and humans to dominate. Civilization may have polished our manners, but not our instincts. He once wrote, "A prince must be both, a fox and a lion, the fox to recognize traps, and the lion to frighten wolves." That line wasn't poetic flourish. It was psychological truth. The lion is strength, the visible, undeniable presence of authority. People follow power. They can feel. They obey what they fear. The fox is intelligence, the mind that sees deception, that outthinks opponents, that bends the unseen. Rules of the game. Together, the lion and the fox form the complete strategist, one who can command obedience and avoid destruction. Most people, however, are neither. They are the lamb, moral, sincere, predictable. The lamb believes honesty earns safety, that kindness ensures fairness. But in a world ruled by predators, innocence is not a virtue. It's an invitation. Fear, manipulation, perception. These are the three currencies of power. Fear controls behavior, from rulers to managers, from generals to parents. Fear shapes obedience, more reliably than love. Centuries later, psychology proved him right. In Stanley Milgram's experiments, ordinary people obeyed commands that violated their conscience simply because an authority figure told them to. Fear overrides morality. Manipulation shapes belief. The powerful no longer fight wars with swords. They fight with narratives. Control the story, and you control perception. This is the essence of propaganda, of marketing, of influence. Robert Greene echoed Machiavelli centuries later. Never reveal your intentions. Always say less than necessary. Because the moment your motives are clear, you're no longer powerful. You're predictable. Perception becomes reality. Humans don't follow truth. They follow the appearance of truth. Leaders, influencers, institutions. They thrive not by being good, but by seeming good. Machiavelli understood that image is a weapon. A ruler's virtue is not in what he is, but in what others believe him to be. And this is where goodness fails. The morally consistent man mistakes predictability for strength. He plays by rules that everyone else only pretends to respect. But the fox-lion hybrid, the Machiavellian mind, knows the truth. Power lies in adaptation. Morality was never designed for survival. It was designed for control. Even our conscience, our empathy, our sense of fairness. These are strategic illusions, mechanisms that help tribes survive by suppressing conflict. Beneath them, the ancient predator still lives. And so the game continues, not in jungles, but in boardrooms, governments, and social networks. The faces are civilized, the words refined, the methods subtle, but the logic remains the same. Power devours weakness. Machiavelli didn't create this truth. He revealed it, because in every human interaction, behind every moral mask, the same struggle endures, between the predator and the lamb. And history, as always, remembers the predator. That single sentence from Machiavelli remains one of the most disturbing truths ever written about human nature and power. Machiavelli understood that morality, for most of history, has been a costume, a disguise carefully worn by those who rule. From kings to presidents, from popes to CEOs, the performance of virtue has always mattered, more than virtue itself. Power doesn't need to be moral. It only needs to look moral enough to be trusted. In the Renaissance, monarchs claimed divine right, not because they were holy, but because holiness made obedience easier. The church promised salvation, while funding wars. Nobles commissioned paintings of saints, then plotted assassinations in the same breath. The contradiction didn't matter. The illusion did. And that same pattern repeats today. A leader who smiles, who speaks of justice, who performs empathy on camera, will always inspire more loyalty than one who admits the ugly truth of ambition. Modern democracies thrive on this moral theater. Governments justify invasions as humanitarian acts. Corporations preach sustainability while exploiting cheap labor. Influencers sell virtue, authenticity, kindness, awareness, while chasing attention like a currency. This is Machiavelli's world centuries later. A civilization obsessed with appearing good, terrified of being seen as bad, and indifferent to what either really means. The reason this illusion works is psychological. People crave moral certainty. We want to believe our leaders are righteous, that our systems are fair, and that our collective goodness is real. It comforts us. It makes the chaos of life feel meaningful. Without that illusion, the moral scaffolding of society would collapse. So we participate in the lie. We applaud virtue as performance, not practice. We prefer clean narratives over uncomfortable truths. A saint who sins can be forgiven. A villain who tells the truth cannot. Machiavelli exposed this contradiction with brutal honesty. He didn't celebrate deceit. He revealed its necessity. He knew that if a ruler behaved with pure virtue, he would be devoured by those pretending to have it. And if he behaved without any virtue at all, he would be despised. The secret, he said, is balance. It is not necessary to be virtuous, but to seem so. In the digital age, that idea has evolved into a global theater of morality. Social media has turned virtue into spectacle. People don't act well. They perform goodness. Outrage, activism, empathy, all broadcasted, branded, monetized. Moral validation has become a form of social capital. And the louder the declaration of virtue, the greater the suspicion of its motive. We now live in an era where public image is morality. Reputation has replaced integrity. And like the kings of Florence, modern figures cloak ambition in compassion, because that's what the audience demands. Machiavelli's insight wasn't cynicism. It was diagnosis. He understood that power wears morality, like a costume, not because it loves virtue, but because it needs the crowd to believe the show. And as long as we keep applauding the performance, the costume will never come off. Machiavelli's Florence has evolved. The castles are gone, but the struggle for control remains. The new palaces are digital. The new courts are global. And the throne now belongs to algorithms. Power today doesn't wear a crown. It wears a brand. In the Renaissance, power was personal. You could see your ruler, love him, hate him, rebel against him. But today, power is invisible. It hides in corporations, in data, in the quiet machinery of influence. The modern prince is not a single ruler, but a self-replicating network, a system designed to reward image over substance, outrage over nuance, and popularity over truth. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand." And never has that been truer. The digital age thrives on perception. On social media, morality itself has become marketing. What we once called virtue is now content. Goodness has become a brand strategy. Corporations release statements of empathy while exploiting economies. Politicians tweet compassion while legislating control. Activism turns into performance. Outrage packaged in 60-second clips. Online, people don't seek to be good. They seek to appear good. Because appearance now determines social survival. Cancel culture, virtue signaling, corporate activism, all born from the same psychology. They weaponize moral language, not to heal society, but to dominate it. Outrage becomes leverage. Guilt becomes currency. The moral battlefield is no longer the church or the state. It's your feed. And so, Machiavelli's realism lives again, wearing modern clothes. His fox and lion now exist in algorithms and institutions. Cunning in design, powerful in influence. They manipulate fear, control perception, and use moral narratives to keep the crowd divided and obedient. But this new arena has created an even deeper paradox. In a world where everyone performs virtue, true goodness becomes rebellion. Real integrity, quiet, consistent, unmarketable, now threatens the system because it cannot be sold, it cannot be measured, and it cannot be used as propaganda. To be good today is to resist both corruption and hypocrisy. It means refusing to play the moral theater that power depends on. It means seeing through the costume of virtue and still choosing to act with conscience, not for image, but for truth. Machiavelli showed us the machinery of power. The digital world has merely refined it, and if goodness still fails, it's not because it is weak, it's because it refuses to lie. And in the age of power, that might be the most radical act of all. This is the lesson that emerges from Machiavelli's darkness. Not a call to abandon morality, but to understand it deeply enough, to use it wisely. The real question was never whether goodness fails, but why goodness so often arrives unarmed. To survive in a corrupt world, virtue must not be blindness, it must be awareness. The good often lose, because they mistake purity for power, when in truth, it is clarity that protects. Moral adaptability, the ability to act with integrity, while understanding the laws of power, is not hypocrisy, it is maturity. Machiavelli never said, one must be cruel to rule. He said one must be prepared to do what is necessary. That distinction separates the naive from the wise. True goodness, in this sense, is strategic compassion, knowing when to forgive, when to confront, and when silence serves better than righteousness. History remembers those who walked this line. Abraham Lincoln, who wielded empathy as a weapon, disguising strategy in humility, and kindness in calculation. He freed millions, not through purity alone, but through the shrewd management of alliances and appearances. Winston Churchill, who spoke of freedom and courage, while maneuvering politically, with the ruthlessness of a fox. And Nelson Mandela, who emerged from decades of imprisonment, not with vengeance, but with vision. He understood that reconciliation, not retaliation, was the ultimate form of power. These figures didn't escape Machiavelli's world. They mastered it. They understood that morality without strategy is noise, and strategy without morality is destruction. The art of leadership and the art of living lie in the balance between the two. To be good in the modern world means learning how power operates without surrendering to its cynicism. It means refusing both corruption and self-righteousness. It means using perception as a tool, not a prison, projecting strength when needed, humility when required, and authenticity, always anchored to purpose. Because morality is not static. It's a skill. It must evolve, adapt, and sometimes disguise itself, not to deceive others, but to protect what is right from those who exploit what is good. Machiavelli didn't teach us how to be evil. He taught us how to stop being naive. His realism was never a rejection of virtue. It was a reminder that purity without wisdom invites defeat. To stay good without being weak is to know the world as it is and still choose conscience, not because it's rewarded, but because it's right. Goodness must grow teeth, not to bite, but to survive. Power does not corrupt the good, it reveals them. The chessboard returns. The pieces are the same, black and white, but something has changed. The player now understands the rules. The white pieces no longer rush forward in blind faith. They move with purpose, with calculation, with awareness. Goodness, once predictable, has learned to see. This is where Machiavelli's lesson ends, and where ours begins. His message was never that goodness should die, but that it must evolve. To survive in a world of wolves, innocence is not enough. Awareness is the new virtue. Power doesn't destroy morality. It exposes it. It shows who we truly are. When comfort disappears, when compromise whispers, when ambition tempts, some are consumed, others awaken. The question then is not can one remain good, but how? To remain good in a corrupt world, one must understand corruption, its logic, its language, its lure, without surrendering to it. The wise do not reject the game. They learn it, master it, and then change the outcome. Machiavelli held up a mirror to humanity, and most were afraid to look. But perhaps that's the final act of courage, to see the reflection without flinching, to recognize both the predator and the lamb inside us, and to choose consciously which one we feed. Goodness fails only when it refuses to see reality. To endure, it must become aware, not innocent. That is the evolution of virtue, not purity but presence. Not perfection, but perspective. And if you've stayed with this story until now, you're a part of that awareness. Because the world doesn't change through ignorance. It changes when people begin to see. So if this journey challenged your thinking, if it made you question the world, your leaders, or even yourself, subscribe, share, join the conversation. Help this message reach the minds that still believe truth and power cannot coexist. Because the only way goodness survives is if it finally learns how to play the game and still refuses to lose its soul.